15 months ago, things looked a lot different for wide receiver Malachi Corley. He had a terrific career at Western Kentucky, was considered one of the top receivers in the 2024 draft class, and was even handpicked by Aaron Rodgers to be the next big thing for the New York Jets. Flash forward 1 year, and unfortunately, he only had 3 catches, had an embarrassing touchdown that he dropped before the goal line, and now ended up getting cut after just 1 season. Corley went from on top of the world to now being on a practice squad fighting for his NFL career. In today's video, we're going to talk about the rise and fall of Malachi Corley, how he went from an unknown recruit to a big-time NFL draft prospect, and then ultimately why he has fallen off and what has happened to him. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about what happened to Malachi Corley.
In order to understand how Malachi Corley got to this point, we first need to go back in time. He ended up being born in the city of Orange City, Florida, and that was in the year of 2002. He was the youngest of a single mom household, as he was one of the 4 kids, and eventually they would move to Campbellsville, Kentucky. This town had about 11,000 people, and this would happen because during his 4th grade year, his sister was on scholarship to play volleyball at Campbellsville University, so they wanted to be closer to that. His older brother Micah also played college football there. Given his mom was always working and athletics seemed to be a specialty for the Corleys, it made sense that in the long run he'd be a pretty good athlete. He ended up being a 4-year starter for the basketball team at Campbellsville, playing point guard for the Eagles. He was also a really good track runner, but according to his mom, his first love and main love was always football. He told everybody that he'd be playing in the NFL one day, but the odds looked pretty slim. Campbellsville was not exactly producing NFL talent, and when he did eventually arrive at his recruitment, he was not really getting noticed much. But he was a good football player. As soon as he stepped on the high school field for Campbellsville, his head coach Dale Estes said he knew that Malachi would be a problem for opposing teams. Coach Estes said, quote, "I've never had another player like him." Malachi played everything for the Eagles. He played wildcat quarterback and receiver on offense, while playing both defensive back and special teams for them. He was constantly looking for ways to improve himself as a player, and according to his hometown friend, he said, quote, "He talked to me about how he could get the ball to him more and how he could win more games. He looks at everything honestly. He's always in film pretty much, and he's a quarterback's best friend." Malachi's freshman year was largely spent getting his feet underneath him, but he was already known as an athletic freak and a determined runner. It was the start of his nickname that he would earn in college, YAC King. His sophomore year in 2017, Malachi would run for 356 yards and 6 touchdowns, as well as catching 33 passes for 625 yards and 4 scores. His mom said, quote, "As a mom, I could see the switch was always there, but I think what ultimately flipped that switch was when he was invited to all those camps. He saw then that maybe he could make it out of Campbellsville. He could go D1 and he could go pro because he finally saw the competition and realized he could be as good, if not better than them." His head coach said, quote, "Going into that summer before his junior year, we could just tell that Malachi was a different person. He's a different man and a different football player. His work ethic went to a complete another level." Malachi would work out by himself, on the field or in the weight room when nobody else was looking, and this would be before and after practice, even on holidays. He was doing it so much that it was actually going against the state laws in Kentucky for being overworked as a high school athlete, but he was doing it on his own. As a junior in 2018, he was named the District Player of the Year with 2,500 all-purpose yards and 94 tackles. Despite how good he was at playing, he wasn't really getting any offers. Big-time programs weren't really looking at him, and at the time, he was considered a 2-star recruit, which was likely due to the fact that Campbellsville was only a 1A school. That's the lowest level of competition in Kentucky high school football, and he was one of 20 players on the whole team. There aren't many 1A players that end up going to the next level, but when Malachi did play against higher level of competition, he shut them down or did well against them. So, his lack of offers was really confusing. He ended up having offers from 3 FCS programs in Austin Peay, Murray State, and Eastern Kentucky, which are all pretty much local, and his only FBS offer came from Western Kentucky. As a senior in 2019, Malachi recorded 37 catches, 756 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns, but he broke his ankle in his last game. Instead of getting surgery, Malachi was told it wasn't a problem and proceeded to play a few more football games and the entire season of basketball on that broken ankle. It wasn't noticed until he got to college because there were literally bumps on his ankle that should not have been there. After the basketball season was over, Malachi decided to go ahead and commit to the biggest school that wanted him, and he'd go over to Western Kentucky. They're giving him a shot to play at the FBS level, and he would happily take it. By the time he graduated from Campbellsville, Malachi was a corner instead of a receiver, and was considered a 2-star recruit, the 32nd best recruit in the state of Kentucky, and the 303rd best corner in the class of 2020. So, how would he end up doing in Bowling Green, Kentucky? Well, let's take a look. So when Corley arrived at Western Kentucky, the first thing he told head coach Tyson Helton was that he was going to be an early draft pick in the NFL. Helton said, quote, "He's always betting on himself. He's always had that chip on his shoulder from his mom and how she brought him up. He got the big picture and understood all those things he went through growing up, and it helped him to say that this was the best place for him and that he needed to be at Western Kentucky." Corley took the road less traveled, and it paid off for him. Well, it seemed to be a little bit out of the question early on, but the staff at Western Kentucky was trying to figure out where to place him. Obviously, he came in as a corner, but at 5'11", 215 pounds, they thought he'd be better suited for playing running back. But he spent a lot of time in a hybrid offensive weapon role and basically did whatever the Hilltoppers needed for him. His true freshman year in 2020, he actually got onto the field quite a bit, playing in 9 total games. He only ended up having 6 catches for 65 yards though. Entering his second year in 2021, it was apparent he would eventually become the lifeblood of the Hilltoppers offense as he made 5 starts in 14 games. He ended up catching 73 passes for 691 yards and 7 touchdowns. This was with Bailey Zappi. The very next year, as a sophomore in 2022, he absolutely blew up. He was a starter for all 14 games, catching a total of 101 passes for 1,295 yards and 11 touchdowns. 6 of those games he had over 100 yards receiving, and Corley had become a star. It was the best receiving season in Hilltopper football history, and he would rank 4th in the nation in receiving yards and 7th in receiving touchdowns, and was 1st in the nation with yards after catch with 975. He also became the 1st in the country in missed tackles with over 40, and Corley was a guy who pretty much everyone wanted. That being said, he didn't decide to enter the transfer portal, as he would stay loyal to WKU. He was named to Conference USA's all-offensive team, and as I said, his season was so good that Power 5 schools would reach out to him, but instead of chasing the money, he decided to stick around. Coach Helton said, quote, "He was smart enough to play the long-run game and not take the fast money. We are proud of his maturity, and it turned out to be the right move." Before the season started, he was named to a ton of award watch lists, like the Bolitnikoff and the Maxwell Award, and he was considered a preseason All-American. In 2023, Malachi started 12 of 14 games for WKU, and this was because he cracked a rib in an early game against South Florida and would miss 2 weeks due to that. But honestly, he should have missed even more. He decided to come back early from the injury and played pretty well for the Hilltoppers. Coach Helton said, quote, "He was hurt, but you couldn't tell with his style of play. He was still looking for contact, and talk about a pro mentality, good players just find a way." Malachi would finish the 2023 season with 984 yards and 11 touchdowns on 79 catches, all of which led the team. Him and Austin Reed became one of the best duos in college football, and he had over 200 yards against Louisiana Tech and also caught 3 touchdown passes. That was his most notable game. By the end of the year, he consistently ranked near the top of Conference USA, even though he was out 2 weeks. He finished 2023 with another selection to the All-CUSA team and also got an invitation to play in the Senior Bowl. He finished his time at WKU with over 3,000 yards and 29 touchdowns and would have 259 receptions. He showed at the Senior Bowl that he was much more than his nickname of YAC King, and he said, quote, "I've been kind of breaking that narrative and putting a lot of stuff on film and really showing guys what I made down here, that I'm not just a yards after catch guy." He was able to increase his route tree and showcased how good he was at returning kicks, something he hadn't really done since high school. It was enough to drastically shoot his draft position up, and given his size and playing style, he was already getting comparisons to Deebo Samuel as a really tough runner with good hands. While he didn't compete at the NFL Combine, he still put up really solid measurables at his pro day with a relatively slow 40 time of 4.56. Since he's a receiver that's more likely to run through you at 215 pounds than by you, a few different teams were excited to try him out and see where he would fit in their plans. But one team was far and away the most interested in Malachi as a prospect. According to NFL Mock Database, Corley was a projected second-round pick and the 63rd overall prospect. As I said, there was one team that was primarily interested in him, and eventually the New York Jets decided to draft him with the first pick of the 3rd round, based largely on the fact that Aaron Rodgers pushed the Jets to take him.
He arrived in New York with a receiving core that already included guys like Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, Allen Lazard, and Mike Williams. Unfortunately, Corley was never really able to get anything going, as he would finish dead last in terms of stats. He finished with a grand total of 3 catches for 16 total yards. He did have one good moment in which he ended up having a touchdown, except it didn't happen. He celebrated too early as he ended up dropping the ball before the goal line, and instead of registering his first career touchdown, he instead had one of the most laughable moments of the 2024 NFL season. This is pretty much all that Corley was known for last year, and for a guy who was so hyped up he just never got an opportunity. Going into 2025, there being a new coaching staff, and he didn't have a great first year, so he was already on thin ice. After a preseason in which he pretty much did nothing, Corley ended up getting released yesterday, August 26th. This sort of made NFL history, as quote, Corley, buried near the bottom of the depth chart throughout camp, became the highest drafted player from 2024 to be released. This is obviously not good news for Malachi, but he's still going to have a chance. He was probably going to be picked up on waivers, and as of this afternoon, he has been taken by the Cleveland Browns. He'll be signed to their practice squad, and it looks like he'll have to work his way back into the league. He will join a Cleveland receiving corps that is already led by Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, Jamari Thrash, and undrafted rookie Isaiah Bond. With the wear and tear of the NFL season, I bet he will get a chance to be on the active roster at some point, but this is probably his last chance. If not, he'll have to go off to one of the spring leagues, and that would definitely be very sad to see. Corley was always seen as a project-type player with the Jets, but the biggest reason why all this has happened is that he just did not take advantage of his opportunities on the field. The NFL is a cruel business, and to some degree, it doesn't matter where you're drafted, you just need to perform. But we will just have to wait and see what happens, and hopefully he balls out with the Browns this season. What do you guys think though? If you're a Jets fan, why did you guys release Malachi Corley? Who's another player I could do a what happened to video on next? And also before you go, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and check out one of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.